can you also give us any examples of how our letters have evolved through their visual forms and symbols in particular?
Absolutely, yes, and I do appreciate the sort of restriction or the limitation of the question, because there is just so much that you could talk about with these symbols that really you'd need to separate out their stories and their facets as
Mm.
symbols, because you can talk about what sound they stand for. You can talk about who's using them, who's passing them on, so the human history behind these letters. But as terms of visual things, that's what we're all about at the end of the day. It's all about turning human language, which is primarily expressed through sound and speech. This is primary for people, for hearing and speaking infants. There is of course signing, which is another one of these sort of prime modalities. And then later on, in not only in human history, but then also in our individual development, we have writing. And writing is all about the eyes and making things, making language enter the brain in a different direction. And they have changed. These symbols have changed drastically. There are very few elements of the alphabet, the individual facets of the characters, that are eternal. Well, actually, that's not very few. There are none of them. None of them are eternal. In that, all of them, nothing can be taken for granted over the history of the alphabet. There are things perhaps that have endured a long time since the alphabet's ultimate origins, but they've all gone through the motions. One of which I would say is that the letters over the centuries have been simplified. That's not a bad
Mm.
thing. I don't mean that as to say, oh, they've been reduced in total complexity, but their design, the number of strokes or lines that it takes to write these characters has reduced. And that's not a sign of laziness, that's a sign of efficiency and of mass literacy. If we take the alphabet back to its earliest origins, and we can maybe get into when and where that was, these symbols and characters are much more complicated. If I had to write the full thing, the full pictographic symbol when I'm making a shopping list today, it would take forever. So it's no wonder that we see a reduction in the number of lines, the number of strokes, the number of details over time as we humans get just so literate down the millennia. So that's a general trend that we do see and that I can point out to you. A second being, of course, this concurrently, the medium and the materials of writing are changing as well. What you're writing with, who you're writing for, and what you're writing on. All of these have gone into our letters, regardless of context. You can tease out all of these different historical circumstances.
Yeah, incredible. And as you were talking, I was thinking, is this, it's hard to condense such an epic journey, the world of letters and how they've evolved in our language, right? And then there's many other languages, many other scripts, many other alphabets. But then I guess there's sort of milestones in history, whether it's trade or convenience or, the number of people being able to understand it. And so the strokes have simplified rather than being this sort of slightly artistic form or highly artistic and detailed. Not to take anything away from the alphabet, it's still, got its beauty. But it becomes a much more functional way of communicating. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Oh, completely. I think it is all about function and about the uses that you are putting it to. You can, you know this better than me, put detail and flair and art back into the letters. It's called calligraphy. It's all too familiar to you and your listeners. But there is a general trend towards stripping away certain details and making it as user friendly as possible. Absolutely.
And then at what point did we go, oh, well, actually, we also maybe want some lowercase letters?
This is the perfect example, absolutely perfect example, because this illustrates the themes and the motivations that I just hoped to outline there. As you correctly say, uppercase letters, the capital letters, they're the older ones, and maybe people may have a kind of intuitive sense about this. They're not the most common letters today, but they are more complex than the more differentiated from each other in the way that they look, how it takes to draw them, and that's because they're older and they come they go back to that time when these characters looked like things. They were more pictographic. They looked like objects, body parts, animals that you could find in the world millennia ago. Um, but what happens is that these uppercase letters make their way through the ancient world, through the hands of the Phoenicians, then the Greeks, and then the Romans. And the ancient world is pretty literate. Writing is increasingly not restricted to an elite. I would dispute the fact that it was ever a completely elite activity. We do have plenty of examples of quite humble people writing. But nonetheless, in what you might call the classical era of ancient Rome, the days of Cicero and Caesar and all that stuff, there is nonetheless mass literacy. All sorts of people of all sections of society are writing, and they're writing on different media as well. So you're not only writing on papyrus, you're also writing on stone. And the way that you'll form your letters in those two contexts and with those two media will differ. If you're writing a grand public inscription that's meant to be impressive and fancy and take time and to be legible from a clear distance, then you're going to write the capital letters that you've received from the Greeks. But if you are writing a letter to your friend and it's like an invitation to a birthday party and it's only meant for her and your eyes, you don't need to do all of that. You can write the letters in a more fluid, more joined up, a narrower way, a way that also works with the material of papyrus, or wood or wax, whatever it is you're writing it. And this is not just speculation. We have these documents from ancient Rome, which is very cool. Some of the best informal documents that we have come from Britain, from Hadrian's Wall, because of the climate, slightly wet and damp climate of Northumberland has preserved these documents for us, and that's just fantastic. And consequently, in the second context, the informal context, we see the development of cursive writing that's much more fluid, much more joined up. The letters lose a lot of their complexity because writing is speeding up as a process. And it's eventually, the key fact is, the old capital letters, they never go anywhere. We never lose memory of them. And so through the Middle Ages, capital letters and the new cursive letters, or what we call minuscule letters, lowercase, basically they carry on. They're side by side in medieval writing until our modern distribution of these letters is more or less established. That happens towards the end of the Middle Ages, about using a capital letter for titles or for emphasis or the beginning of a sentence. Gradually, the distribution that we would recognize emerges.
Amazing. God, what a journey. What a journey. And it's lovely that there was this recognition that actually both need to exist, because I think it would be a real shame if we didn't have our uppercase and lowercase letters, partly from an artistic point of view, but also being able to craft and construct our letters, but also, I guess, identify things like the start of a sentence or somebody's name and all these other additional benefits that come our way with we're using these uppercase and lowercase, which may not have been considered. I don't know.
Well, absolutely. And I would turn the question over to you. I mean, what would calligraphy lose if we suddenly got rid of the capital letters, if you were only stuck with the minuscule versions of them? I mean, would that make calligraphy less fun, perhaps?
Good question. Good question. I think it would remove the ability to really play with the larger letters and give that staple, give that extra flourish. And I think looking even back into manuscripts and stuff where they have these really beautiful ornate letters, really signifying the start of a new chapter, page, whatever it might be, and all these little kind of indicators. So there's a functional element, but also I think from an artistic side, you can really go to town on a capital letter and then allow the rest of the word to sort of unfold. And I guess this also ties into the sort of readability, understanding the integrity of the letters and things like that. But yeah, you can really enjoy a capital letter in other ways than when you're creating it. So yeah, it's quite special.
I mean, if you were limited to lowercase as a calligrapher, you'd think, oh, yay, another lowercase, another loop, brilliant.
Yeah, exactly.